Hello, and welcome to part 1 of this review of The Naked Ape. The Naked Ape is a book written by Desmond and published by Triad in 1967. Briefly, the book examines how our daily life is influenced by primal behaviors, needs, and wants. Desmond Morris comes to this through his experience as a zoologist. Although it is a very old book by modern standards, it introduces a number of topics that should be known and understood by people who want to be skeptical and apply logic and reason to the world around them. The Naked Ape opens by placing the naked ape in its place in the ape family tree. The author then attempts to describe the reason for their exploration of this species, particularly focusing on where other fields of anthropology have been. The author highlights what they can show in cultural blind alleys and what they can't. Equally important is the admission that as a member of this group, they cannot entirely remove their own bias and limits in examining their own species. A case is made for the failure of any group which has been unable to advance with technology or culture beyond that of the simple tribe, and points towards countries like America as being the de facto modern world and modern species. The role of psychoanalysis is reviewed as meritorious but biased. This is down to the idea that any individual examined would, by virtue of requiring assistance, be inherently defective, and that this same field has realized this fact and is looking at examining the healthy individual, having placed the cart before the horse. The author begins with a basic introduction to evolution, natural selection, and a few biological definitions regarding species. This is done through the example of a squirrel to begin their chapter on origins. The idea that a species that exists came from somewhere, and through the differentiation and specialization of each, it has become distinct from others of its kind, and is now unable to interbreed with the group it came from. The author looks at how it fits the naked ape and how the naked ape fits into the succession of other apes, finding that it can only be put in with the great apes. The problem is the lack of hair, limbs, and locomotion. All of these do not match with the other apes properly. There is too little hair, the arms are too short, and the legs are too long, and finally the way of walking is clearly different. These are all considered to bring humility to the examining person and keep them detached and honest from the form of introspection and self-examination done. The author considers what other species have abandoned their hairsuit covering and find very few have gone as far as the naked ape. This is a unique aspect of the species, and the reasons for it are explored. The author then provides a brief synopsis of the species, the evolution from tree to ground ape, and then to hunting ape. The focus is put on the behavioral changes that occurred in this process to better affect the hunter-gatherer approach and the development of a territorial species. This is a large change from the tree-living and largely herbivorous apes to the predatorial ape. This is unique in apes, but not in the animal kingdom, as the author shows with the panda. The panda having gone from being an omnivorous bear-like creature to an entirely herbivorous bear creature. The author then explores how the naked ape compares to other predators. Seen here are the top cat and top dog-like predators, the wolf and the African lion, and each of their features. The powerful running, the short GI tract, the sharp eyes, powerful bodies, ears that can turn, and claws that will rip. They then compared what the ape began with and what it left with when the naked ape evolved. As seen here with the mannequin, the basic shape has remained unchanged, but the brain, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, hands, hips, and legs of the ape have, to one extent or another, changed over time. What it is now competing against in the predator species, and how it has developed a large brain cavity, eyes suited to hunter-gatherer, a more pronounced nose, better taste, and canines for tearing at meat. They retain their dexterous hands, but altering the hip and neck alignment. The legs develop the powerful muscles for running both short and long distances, and the feet flatten out to accommodate travel, whilst the arms shorten slightly. This produces the figure seen on the far right. The author goes into the role of neoteny, an infantile stage, in the growing of the naked ape, and why this was important to development and abilities, and how we are even now experiencing this in our modern culture. The author opens the chapter on sex with a blunt insight. The species pulled by its ape, carnivore, and civilization is going in 3 different directions, each having its own set of rules and norms. They argue that due to the long time frame of the naked ape's evolution, a transition between gatherer to hunter-gatherer was mostly successful, but the short time frame for the civilization has created rules that depend heavily on the intelligence of the naked ape, and so has been less well achieved. The author breaks this down to 3 phases: the pair formation, the precopulatory activity, and copulation. This section bluntly presents a sole depiction of the process involved in the mating rituals of the naked ape. It also provides a series of interesting insights into the longevity and timing of relationships. The author discusses the timing and effects of the differing sexual maturity of the genders. Afterwards, the reason for this and how reproduction is influenced by the naked ape's origin. The part that becomes really interesting is the author's exploration of how mating behavior, fidelity, and relationships relate to the change in species living style. It has had an effect on the relationships of the modern naked ape. This has an effect on the relationship between partner bonding, child rearing, and the social status of individuals. Depending on your view of marriage, when you see this, you'll either consider this, or this. It also discusses the idea of the rebellious child in terms of a biological predisposition to be reactive and intolerant to the parental household during adolescence, and why this may be the case. The significant section is the role of body signals in the mating ritual and interaction, the comparisons between the naked ape's signals and those of other apes, such as the baboons seen here, and the reflection of the facial features and other body parts. Finally, the author discusses how the civilization has had to adapt and change the naked ape through social and cultural transformations. These facilitated involvement in communities of many thousands in size, whereas the naked ape's ancestors lived in tribes and clans of several hundred at most. This covers concepts like polygamy and monogamy, physical interaction with others, and hygiene. The author must in some ways be criticized for the depiction of homosexuality in this chapter. This may, however, be a product of the time it was published and the environment, which was both extremely conservative and extremely intolerant. The author begins their chapter on child rearing with basic biology and an explanation of the impact child rearing has on the naked ape. The idea presented is that a female with the resources could theoretically breed once a year if offspring were weaned immediately. They then explain the reason behind the realistic theoretical number of 10 offspring. The author moves on to exploring the behavior of the mother towards the child and the interaction with some interesting insights. Some of the behaviors discussed by the author extend into adolescence and adulthood. Others are observed in cultural creations like folk music. The average child is just over 3 kilograms, or 1/20th of an adult's weight. Growth is rapid in the first 2 years, and the author discusses the rate and type of growth in childhood. Interesting is the difference in muscle tone between the other apes and the naked ape. A young monkey may cling to its mother, whilst the naked ape can only achieve limited movement and grasp with its weak muscles. They then lead into the background and conclusion of a 6-year experiment, which taught a chimpanzee to speak and was extremely interesting for those who have an interest in how similar and yet different we are to the other apes. The chimpanzee could speak 7 words by 6 years, whilst a naked ape could speak 2,000. This is largely a brain issue, as the vocal cords of the chimpanzee are structurally identical. Admittedly, it is likely what prevents a Planet of the Apes scenario. The ideas put forward about the development and meaning of laughter are interesting. If true, they will be exceptionally important. This is further built on by the author's description of laughter in social use. Thank you for watching part 1 of this video. Part 2 will be posted in the near future. Please post any comments, suggestions, or questions you may have below.